Assembly's live, so come subscribe. Your soul's in trial, or simply tired. Your soul medicine, it gets revived. The warrior line, soul tribe. Assembly's live, it's friendly vibes. Your soul medicine will give you life. You're a warrior, let's get this right. Warrior line, soul tribe. Assembly's live, so come subscribe. Your soul's in trial, or simply tired.
Who are you? What are you? I mean, it's a very simple question. It's a very base question. But if you be honest, if I walk up to a person, this is Warrior Line Podcast, YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for joining for this special talk I want to make this morning or this afternoon, where you may be. Who are you? What are you? If I walk up to somebody today on the street that I didn't know, and I asked them, what am I, or who am I? Most likely the first thing they're going to say, especially when they hear my voice, the first thing they're going to say is, you're a black man. So am I? Am I a black man? Who created the black man? Why does my looks define me as a black man? Where'd they come from? Because I can take you to other places around the world that somebody look like me wouldn't be called a black man. Who are you? What am I? What's your identity? Who created your identity? And if I tell him, no, I'm not a black man, who am I? What would his response be? He probably wouldn't respond. He probably would look confused. He or she probably look like, what are you talking about? Man, you're a black man. I hear your voice and I see you. You're a black man. What else you want me to say, man? Can I be a human? See, we've been conditioned. Most people want to listen to hear this, whether you want to admit it or not, we've been conditioned to program to identify people according to this thing called race. It's a social construct, meaning this was constructed on purpose for the benefit of the power, the hierarchy group. Race is fiction, racism is real. Because race was a social construct created for people in power to divide people. We have a discussion about identity politics. Who created the identity? Who created the structure? I am a theologian. I read about stuff. There's no race in the Bible. There is no, you were either identified by your name or the country you were from. Check it out. There's no black men in the Bible. I remember the Game of Thrones, and I remember the new spinoff Game of Thrones called House of the Dragon, and it was just wild. House of the Dragon was a new show, and they was going to create this character named Carlos Valerian, Red Sea Captain, and the showrunners and the people that was creating the show wanted to make Carlos Valerian a black man, and the fandom went nuts. You're not true to the source material. You're not true to George Martin's vision. George Martin, the writer of the Game of Thrones book series. You're not true to that. He's got to be white. Because we are programmed and conditioned to make things look like us, and that's what we're comfortable with. And we want to identify what we want to identify with. And we are brainwashed to look at people based on the identity that we've been brainwashed and indoctrinated to believe. Because race is fiction, but it's true in this society because that's how we live. Because we've been conditioned that race is who you are and is what it's always been, and that's not true. Race is a created fiction for the purpose of domination, control, enslavement. Listen, a social construct. A social construct is an idea or concept that is created and maintained by a society rather than existing naturally. Read the part again. Social contract is created and maintained by a society rather than existing naturally. Social constructs are based on the human interaction and agreement. And what is race? What is race? Race was created as a social contract to divide people in order to prevent the majority of people from rising up against these with wealth or power. It has been woven into the fabric of our society. While race does not represent any biological differences, it is a very real and profound social reality and impact the lives of people of color. Just because something is fiction doesn't mean it's reality. Some of y'all need to just marinate on that. Because I said race is fiction. Well, if it's fiction, it's not real. No, it is very real. It's fiction because it's defined, it has no biological differences. That's the fiction. But racism is real because it has a real impact on our lives. Racial is a social construct, and because it's been constructed, you and Mia believe that that man is not human, he is a white man. That woman is not a woman, but first, she is a black woman, a white woman. This is how we construct a society, to purposely divide people in categories, to identify them how we want to identify them, to control them, to control our belief system, to control how they act and progress in society. Who created the slave? This nation was started as an apartheid state. White people were free, and black people, or people of color, how you want to decide it, Africans at that time mostly, were enslaved. Listen to this. Nobody is born a slave. Societies, cultures, government like this one enslave people. You should never really refer to somebody as they were slaves. No, they were enslaved. They were born human. They were born free. They were born human, free, men, women, and they were enslaved by the society, whoever society they were born into, if they had that institution, like this one had when it was founded, even before it was founded. Nobody is born a slave. You are enslaved. Our ancestors were enslaved. They were not born, and that's a distinction with a difference. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. They were enslaved. And so when we look at this social contract, who created the slave? I don't want to get flagged by YouTube, so I'm going to, who created the N-word? You know what the N-word is. Who created the Negro? Who created the colored person? Who created the black? Who created this? Who identified you? Who are you? You don't know? You're black? What are you for? You're a human being. But you don't identify yourself as a human being. No job application says human. It's got all these categories, and you need to find the box that fits you. Find your box. Find your place. Find how we identify you. See, this is it's in all our lives. Surveys, applying for college, applying for jobs, applying for security clearances. It's everywhere. How we identify, this is how society has been controlled. And then we got a nerd to talk about identity politics. Who created the identity? It's systemic. It's systemic racism. We had a civil war. 700,000 people got killed to end this system of slavery. Another point, the 13th Amendment did not end slavery. The 13th Amendment made the institution illegal in the United States. The Civil War ended slavery. People had to die. And an amendment did not end slavery. They didn't just have an amendment and slavery was over. No, after several hundred thousand people were killed, then the institution, by the 13th Amendment, made the institution of slavery illegal. This is why reparation is critical, because the government owes the debt. Not you, not the people who individually did it or their descendants, but the government allowed this institution of slavery to promulgate on these shores. Systemic racism. What is systemic racism? Well, who created Jim Crow? You know how it was created? In 1877, when white folks that had fell out of line with each other, North and South, went to war, 7,000 people got killed. In 1877, they just said, we're going to just take the troops out in Reconstruction. And then Jim Crow was created systemically. You ever heard of the black codes? You ever heard of vagrancy laws? You ever heard of that? That's systemic racism against a specific group of people that we call Negro, black, colored, whatever, because on this fiction and hierarchy and social construct of race. So who are you? In the South, you are a segregated black man or woman or child living in Jim Crow era South. Why? What do you do? Nothing. You just simply were born black, as we define by the fiction of race, and your reality is racism. Race is fiction, racism is real, but that because it's fiction doesn't mean it's not real in practicality. The fiction comes from the biological differences. It was just created to justify the hierarchical system of identity politics. The reason why the election was lost is not because of messaging, not because the other candidate had a better plan, because he had no plans, except staying out of jail. It's the only plan he had. Many people, millions of people in this country, besides maggots, in both parties, out of parties, cannot fundamentally look past the identity of a black Asian woman being the president of the United States. She can have children. She can have babies. She can cook the food, do the dishes. She can do all woman type stuff. But they cannot fathom. And many so-called Democrats voted for him too. Don't fool yourself. And many stayed at home that could not vote for him for whatever reason in mind. They still could not drink the Kool-Aid of their racism, because a black woman, they have been raised to believe she's not a president. She has to be black first. And because she's a black woman, I cannot vote for her, because systemically in my being that I'm conditioned that I cannot vote for him because she's not qualified, because she is a black woman. And I always tell a black woman, I will deny her humanity. I will deny who she is as a person. I will deny everything about her, because she is a black woman first and will always be a black woman first, no matter what she says, no matter what program she's done, no matter how her experience is, no matter how often she said, she is a black woman, and I cannot do it because of my racism and bigotry that I was indoctrinated with in this country. I cannot see past the blackness in her womanhood. So, we want to talk about identity politics. Who created it? Who created the Indian? They didn't call themselves Indians. Columbus called them Indios. That's how I got to the Americas. We became Indians. So who created it? Who created, again, the Negro? Who created the redlining? Who created it? Where did it come from? The term Indian is to refer to India's people of the Americas originated from a misunderstanding by Christopher Columbus, who believed he had reached the shores of India and subsequently referred to the people he encountered as Indios. Christopher Columbus never stepped 1 foot in the United States of America. Did you know that? The conditioning. You were taught, you watched the Western John Wayne, that the Indians were bad, that the Indian was savages, and that's how you defined them, because you was programmed from the time you started watching Westerns, and good old John Wayne saving the day, and the white man killing the Indians because they're savages. Who created the savage? How are you a savage when you're protecting your own homeland, but you're a savage? So we want to talk about identity politics. I don't really think we want to have this discussion, because systemic racism, prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against a person or a people on the basis of their membership in a particular racial, ethnic group, typically one that a minority or marginalized. It is targeted action. But you have to have power to enact racism. This is what people are lost at. What's the power? Who created the conditions that in the United States you can have slaves? The government. Who created the condition that in the United States of America in the South you can have black codes? The government. Who created the condition where you can go to a church picnic, take pictures and send postcards of black men and sometimes women being hung? The government. To conduct racism, you have to have institutional power to do the racism. Somebody being racist doesn't mean they have the power to become racism. Y'all gonna miss this. I'm trying to put it where the goats can get it. Just because a person is racist don't mean they can practice racism. Racism is the institutional construct where the government has power to create laws that people gotta go on the back of the bus. Then in the church, you gotta sit in the segregated session. They asked Martin Luther King, a program, a question on Meet the Press way back in the 60s, and the reporter asked him, he said, Dr. King, he said, your church don't have any white people in it. So why do you have a problem with black people going to white churches and they gotta sit in the segregated section? He said, we don't have white people in our church by their choice. So we're not segregated. We don't have the opportunity to bring them in the church to bring together. If they come to our church, they can sit anywhere that an open seat is. Just because society has segregated us don't mean we're segregating. And so when you talk about racism, you got to be careful what you're talking about, because that is a social construct, a systemic construct that the government has put in place. And that's why this erasure is going on. Where there's no black first, and why is there always a black first? Because at some point they couldn't do it. Why was Jackie Robinson the first black person to play baseball, to cross the color line in baseball? Because black people weren't playing baseball in the major leagues at that time. Babe Ruth never hit a home run off a black pitcher. Why? Because when Babe Ruth was playing, blacks was not in the major leagues. So Jackie Robinson was the first because he was the first. When the first is because somebody or situation caused them not to be able to participate in something. And baseball was racist because the institution of baseball did not allow black people to play. That is racism in practice, in reality. And so I just want to close with this identity politics. We need to cut. No, what you need to do when you talk about identity politics, talk to the people who created. Who are you? You don't know? Don't say Negro, they ain't nothing. Black, what's that? That's just a hierarchy place that people have placed you in. Who are you? You should say, I'm a human being in my belief system made by the hand of God. And I don't have to allow myself to be placed in any box. I have to get along in society and answer these silly questions. But I look at you. When I see people, I see them as human beings. I see them as people I want to treat them. I try to treat them the way I want to be treated, as a human being first. Not somebody for my political purposes or my own flaws that I have. A human being. But for us, it's tough because we've been socialized, indoctrinated, to marginalize, to set apart. Even our own. Who taught you to hate yourself? You know who taught you to hate yourself? The people who created the box that they want to place you in. Well, I'm here to tell you, God sees you. People who know sees you. We all are image bearers created by the hand of God.
Warrior Line, Soul Tribe, Assemblies Live, so come subscribe. Your soul's in trial, or simply tied. Your soul medicine, it gets revived. The Warrior Line, Soul Tribe, Assemblies Live, it's friendly vibes. Your soul medicine will give you life. You're a warrior, let's get this right. Warrior Line, Soul Tribe, Assemblies Live.